welcome back to Live for Queers, the corner of the internet where you can find a lot of queer book suggestions and where I chat about queer themes. If you followed me since the beginning, this is definitely a different setup than usual, but I've traveled home to my parents in Italy and this is actually my brother's bookshelf. So there's a lot of classics here, there's a lot of history stuff on the shelves because he's a historian, so this is what he does and this is what he likes. But the reason why I'm here today is because I wanted to show you guys the queer books that I have here at my parents. These are interesting to me because some of them I've held on to since I was a teenager, so since I was 16 to 17, so almost a decade ago, and then some of them are more recent and I just haven't had the chance to bring them over to Sweden because that was supposed to be a temporary move. So I've divided this video into a few categories, and that is 6 different categories for you to have a clearer ideas of the type of books that I've had on my bookshelf for almost a decade. So the first category is series. I don't read that many series anymore, but I used to. And so I have 2 that are here on my shelf. So the first one is The Foxhole Court. This is a book that was self-published and it still has a really big fandom. I think my friend Anna has introduced me to the fandom itself and to fan fiction. And she also writes fan fiction, so shout out to her and shout out to the amazing fan fictions and the amazing writing that she does. And this is really a good series. If I'm being honest, I loved it. There's a lot of trauma in here, so be careful with the trigger warnings here. And then the other series I've got is The Raven Boys that you can see up here. The Raven Boys has the queer part a little bit later. Whereas the Foxhole Court, like, you kind of understand that everybody's a bit queer from the beginning. Whereas the Raven Boys is a bit of a slow burn in terms of that, but it also has a really strong fandom still. And then second category, I'm going into the non-fiction up here. I've got 3 books that I really enjoyed. And one is called Life Isn't Binary, and it does exactly what it says. It discusses the way we treat life and our identities as binary. And then Trans Power by Juno Roche, another great novel that I think I picked up at an independent event of some sorts in the UK. Was great. It's interviews mainly, and it's amazing. And then a sort of Bible for feminism, I think, it's Bad Feminist by Roxane Gay. Trigger warnings for this, but these essays are just amazing and what introduced me to more inclusive feminism in all sorts of senses. And then the third category is historical fiction. I didn't even know I had this many books that fit under the category, but hey, you learn something new every day. So these are the historical fiction books that I've got. And one is called Like People in History. I haven't read this yet. I've had it on my bookshelf for years. And for some reason, I just never pick it up properly. And then the darling of the web. We've got The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I can actually say that I got to this before TikTok did. So I'm proud of this. And then we've got Morris, which is one of the queer classics I'm going to talk about a little bit more going in the future. It's one of the first few novels, if not the first novel, talking about queer people that actually has a happy ending. And then we've got Goodbye to Berlin by Christopher Isherwood, which is set in the 1930s in Berlin, just before the rise of Nazism, and it's another classic like Isherwood in general. We've got Middlesex. This is quite a controversial book, but it's what introduced me to intersexuality and what it meant, and I think this was published in the early 2000s, so I'm cutting it some slack. And then The Binding by Bridget Collins. This I only purchased because it had such a pretty cover. I was not expecting it to be queer, but it was. And I know that a lot of people either love or hate this book, but I quite liked it, and so I kept it. Another category that I've put together is poetry. I used to be a lot more into poetry when I was a teenager. I found slam poetry online and I thought it was the greatest thing ever, and especially the button poetry videos. Shout out to, oh my goodness, what is her name? Sabrina, I think that's her name, who wrote Ode to the Women of Long Island. That is an amazing poem. I listen to it so often. But these are the books that I've got with me just now. This is Brand New Ancient by K. Tempest. This has their dead name on it, so apologies for that, but it's a great, they're a great British author. And Autopsy by Dante Collins. This is a collection that talks about grief and family and found family. We've got another classic, which is Allen Ginsberg's Howl. I actually placed second reading this poem at a competition here in Italy when I was in high school. And then two really beautiful collections of Federico Garcia Lorca, Romanfero Gitano and Alle 5 della Sera, which is at 5 o'clock in the evening. They're both great editions. I bought this in the UK, and this I stole from my grandma years ago. I love his poetry, it's great. And then the last category I've got, the last two categories I've got are young adult. So young adult books are still having a place in my heart because sometimes I need something a little bit more lighthearted than literary fiction. And so this is what I got. This is Autobiography by Christina Lauren. I think this duo never wrote anything queer after this, but I really enjoyed it. I go back to rereading the epilogue of this book every once in a while because it's so tender. I love it. I just cry at it every time. And then Openly Straight and Honestly Ben are a duology. I really enjoyed it. And the second book actually made me realize a lot more what bisexual people go through a lot of times in terms of discrimination from other queer people. I never faced that as a bisexual person myself. So at that moment in life, I didn't even know that was a thing. And then we've got a classic for us, is Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. And then one really, really underrated young adult novel is One Man Guy. I pretend that the sequel does not exist because it involves cheating, and we do not like that. And then If I Was Your Girl is actually one of the only fiction books that I've read that center a trans woman instead of a trans man. If you've got more, please send them my way because I can't seem to find many. And then we've got None of the Above, which is about intersexuality, and then two more, which are kind of like lighthearted rom-com type of queer novels. And then for the last one, we've got one author. This is my little one author category, and that is Adam Silvera's books. So Adam Silvera, I came to discover him when I first got to the UK years ago, and which is why I have so many of his books in paperback and in physical form instead of Kindle. And so this is his own little category because I've got 4 books here. They Both Die at the End, More Happy Than Not, What If It's Us, and History Is All You Left Me. And actually, I want to say an unpopular opinion just now. The ones that made me cry the most, or the one that made me cry the most, was not They Both Die at the End. I know that blew up on TikTok, but History Is All You Left Me made me bawl my eyes out at 2 a.m. or something when I finished it. I just kept on crying and crying and crying. And the More Happy Than Not is also a lot more tragic and a lot more heartbreaking than They Both Die at the End. This is my unpopular opinion. But with that, I am finishing this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I haven't gone through them too quickly, but these are basically the books that I left here at my parents' house in Italy and that I don't think I'm gonna get rid of anytime soon. And perhaps they will come with me to Sweden someday. But I hope I can see you in the next video, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Bye!